Shalom. First and foremost, want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakak Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS that rule well. Peace, love, and salutation to all the brothers out there pushing this word of sincerity and the truth. Shalom to the brothers, sisters, and children out there keeping this word of sincerity and the truth. Okay, I just wanted to go into this lesson, going into the meaning of the underdog and how the underdogs are the ones whom Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai values and raises up into high positions. And underdogs in today's society are the prophets, the men of the Lord, and those who are of the elect, which in Babylon or America's case, the 1/3, but scattered around the four corners of the earth, all Israelites whose name was written in the book of life, who was destined to be saved. They are the underdogs, because they are the ones, or we are the ones, Lord will, I'm of that number. We are the ones that serving Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, sincerity and the truth, while this world continues to serve wickedness in whatever shape, form, or fashion that is, whether it be because of the society over here in America, or whether it be because in other countries they have their own gods and customs and practices that they follow after, that they choose that rather than following the God of the Bible. So the true underdogs are the Israelites. I'm going to get the definition of underdogs. I'm going to get some examples, and Lord will, it's an edifying lesson. So this is underdog meaning on Google, and I'm going to get straight to the points of it. It says a competitor thought to have little chance of winning a fight or a contest, which the underdogs in society, again, it represents starting with the elect. Starting with the men, the 144,000, as well as the rest of the men, women, and children whom the Lord will have mercy on and deliver from the from the land of America, from Babylon the Great. And I'm gonna get a precept on that. But before I get there, I'm gonna read this next one. It says, a person who has little society, a person who has little status in society. So, and look at the example. It says, what is it like to be an underdog in America? Well, what is it like? Basically, it's the life of an Israelite serving Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. That's what it's like. Ask the brothers, and, you ask sisters too. And even children. You can ask all those who serve Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai what their experience is like serving Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai in America. That's the experience of an underdog. Matter of fact, I'm going to get two precepts on that. I'm going to get one of my other apps because I got a couple scriptures lined up. This is Matthew chapter 5. I'm going to start at verse 3. This is the AMPC. It says, blessed, happy to be envied, and spiritually prosperous with life, joy, and satisfaction in the Most High's favor and salvation, regardless of their outward conditions, are the poor in spirit, the humble, who rate themselves insignificant, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So this is literally going into the underdog, verse 3 in itself. It said, blessed or happy for the people who are envied, the people who can who still enjoys what Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai does for them, regardless of what the situation may be, even if it's an unfavorable situation or whatever the case may be. It said the poor in spirit, the humble, who rate themselves insignificant, for you have a place in the kingdom of heaven. Then it says blessed and inevitably happy with a happiness produced by the experience of the Most High's favor, and especially conditioned by the revelation of his matchless grace, are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Let me see. Let me get it in the KJV. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The meek goes into the humble as well. But now I'm going to get down to verse 10. I'm going to get back to the the Amplified. See what verse 10 say. All right. It says, blessed and happy and inevitably fortunate and spiritually prosperous in the state in which the born again child of the Most High enjoys and finds satisfaction in the Most High's favor and salvation, regardless of his outward conditions, are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for being and doing right, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So this is a part of the experience of the underdog in America. You read all Matthew chapter 5, these first few verses, I'm reading the KJV. It says, blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In verse 11, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. This is the experience of an underdog in America. Now I'm reading the AMP. Blessed, happy to be envied, and spiritually prosperous with life, joy, and satisfaction in the Most High's favor and salvation, regardless of your outward conditions, are you when people revile you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil things against you falsely on my account. Because we serve Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, this society despises us. It looks down on us. It despises what we believe in, what we teach, how we carry ourselves. What we despise in this society, they despise us because of that. We don't eat certain foods. We don't eat the things that the Lord considers abominable. One thing that people cannot let go of is pork. A lot of Israelites still cannot let go of pork, regardless of if it's said in the Bible or not. And you start telling them you don't eat pork. Well, they might not say nothing outwardly to you, but they're definitely thinking things about you. Or if you don't celebrate the holidays, that's a big one. They might not say nothing to you outwardly, but they definitely would think differently about you. These things, and sometimes people do say stuff. These things happen. Verse 12, it said, be glad and supremely joyful, for your reward in heaven is great, strong, and intense. For in this same way, people persecuted the prophets who were before you. So that's the experience of like I say, a person who has little status in society. What is it like to be an underdog in America? That's just some of the examples of what it's like to be an underdog in America. So now let's go to some of the stories of the underdogs in the Bible. This is Genesis chapter 25. I'm going to start at verse 22. In the AMP, it says, but the children struggled together within her, kicking and shoving one another. And she said, if it is so that the Lord has heard our prayer, why then am I this way? So she went to inquire of the Lord, praying for an answer. The Lord said to her, the founders of two nations are in your womb, and the separation of two nations have begun in your body. The one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So this is literally the birth of two different nations in one woman, Jacob and Esau. The Lord did this. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out reddish all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau, hairy, which this is the progenitor of what we know as the so-called white race today, Esau, because their skin is red. Well, really, you can see their blood through their skin. That's why when they turn red, that's what you're seeing. They're not white. They lack pigmentation. They lack color. So they're not white. That's why I say he came out reddish all over. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand grasped Esau's heel, and so they named that. So he was called Jacob, one who grabs the heel, supplanter. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. And as you notice, it don't give a description of Jacob because Jacob came out with melanin, just like everybody else at that time did. Esau was the only one who lacked melanin, just like to this day. He still lacks melanin. And even when you got other nations that has less melanin, they still have color. You think about the so-called Chinese, so-called Asians, so-called Japanese, even they still have melanin. They just have less because of this. For Esau, Edom doing, this is all his doing. Now, verse 27, this is the point. When the boys grew up, Esau was an able and skilled hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Jacob was a quiet and peaceful man living in tents. And the quiet and peaceful goes into his character, his nature. He was a man of integrity. He was a man. He was an honest man, perfect. Yahweh Shem Yahushua favored him. He loved him. He hated Esau, but Esau was always outdoors. He was always doing something. Like I said, he was an able and skilled hunter. So he was out. If you hunted something, that means you're going out to kill something or capture something. So Esau was always outside, messing with the animals, killing animals, taking them down, probably making skin, making clothes out of them, but doing it for fun. He do it to this day. You got a lot of Edomites that like to go hunting. And what they do, they kill the animals, chop their heads off, and hang their heads up in their house. Have a whole head of an animal in their house, cutting off antlers to put up as decorations. We don't do that. Jake don't do nothing like that. We go out there and hunt something, 9 times out of 10, we going to hunt some deer or something like that. We finna eat it, We finna make use of it. Esau eat it and then cut his head off and hang his head up. Esau be doing all that wicked shit, but this is where it started at. And just letting you know this is the type of man that he is. He's always outside doing something, doing too much at that too. But Jacob, it said he was a peaceful man living in tents. So Jacob was a man he was a shepherd, which I think it tells you that. Let me go into it. Dwelling in tent, let me see. Yeah. So this is the definition for tent. It says a tent, a nomad's tent, and thus symbolic of wilderness life. Let me see. The nomadic life, because our people was always on the go too. Nomads are always moving. They're always going, to different locations. But I think it also goes into, I think it specifically says he was a shepherd as well. Let me see. See, it's the movable and portable tent of the Israelites in the desert. Letting you know the nomadic life is in the middle, was a part of being mobile, always moving from location to location. But he was also a shepherd too, which it's going to say it in latter chapters that Jacob was he was a shepherd. So this just setting the tone. Jacob was a shepherd while Esau was always out there in the field. And you could just imagine the dynamic back then at that time period. Esau always coming back. When he come back home, he done caught captured something. He done caught some type of deer. But Jacob was always in the field tending to the animals. Standing home, upright, man of integrity. Doing the things that's pleasing in the sight of Yahweh by Shem Yahushua, while Esau out there being a demon. So let's go to let me see. Here we go. Genesis 29. Just to get to the point that he was a shepherd. He was always tending to the animals. Genesis 29 and 18 says, Jacob loves Rachel, so he said, I will serve you as a hired workman for 7 years in return for the privilege of marrying Rachel, your younger daughter. Laban said, it is better that I give her in marriage to you than give her to another man. Stay and work with me. So Jacob served Laban for 7 years for the right to marry Rachel. But they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Now I'm going to skip down. Because the point of it is going into Jacob being a shepherd. And a shepherd was one of those occupations that was despised or looked down on. It wasn't something that was praised in society. It was always something that people looked down on and despised. Let's see. Let me see, where exactly is it? And this is going into when Jacob was just just having all them children, birthing the sons of Israel. All right, and I'm gonna read this one too, because Joseph is another underdog. This is Genesis 30:20, starting at 23. It says, "So she conceived and gave birth to a son," and this is Rachel's son. "And she said, the Most High has taken away my disgrace and humiliation. She named him Joseph, may he add, and said, may the Lord add to me another son. Now when Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go back to my own place and my own country. Give me my wives and my children from whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know the work which I have done for you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, stay with me, for I have learned from the omens and divination and by experience that the Lord has blessed me because of you. And that lets you know that Laban served other gods. That's why he said from omens and divination, because they wasn't serving Yahweh Shema, only Jacob was. Jacob and his wives, and his children were serving Yahweh Shema, his household. But Laban or Laban, however you say his name, they were serving him, and his people were serving other gods. That's why the Lord told Abraham to lead a multitude of your family, because Laban, I'm gonna just say Laban. Laban was he was Abraham's brother's grandson, and when you go down the family line, basically he was Jacob's uncle. So the Lord told Abraham to lead a multitude of your family. You're going to serve me, and I'm going to give you a land, and I'm going to multiply you. And we see that dynamic right here in this scripture. Jacob was serving Yahweh Shema Shai because of Isaac, because of Abraham, and Laban was serving the other gods. So now it says, he said, name your wages, and I will give it to you. Jacob answered him, you know I have served you, and how your possessions, your cattle and sheep and goats have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased and multiplied abundantly, and the Lord has favored you with blessings wherever I turn. But now, when shall I provide for my own household? So Jacob is letting you know that Jacob was tending to the cattle, she was a shepherd. Even Rachel was a shepherdess. It tells you that she tended to the animals. And that occupation was despised, which we're going to get to it. I'm just building it all up. So this is what Jacob was. He was one of the underdogs, because look at it. He was despised by Esau. Even to this day, we are despised by the Edomites. That's why they've been trying to destroy us this whole time. The whole reason why Jacob was even there with his uncle was because Esau was trying to kill him because of the birthright. But you don't think that animosity had been building up over the years? That animosity, that hatred had been building up over the years. You could we just know it, because they were two different nations. They was even in the womb, they was fighting. Like it said, they struggled together in the womb. They were kicking each other, moving about in the womb. It was always destined to be that way, But the Lord said he was going to put that animosity between our nations back during the time of back during the time of the serpent, and Adam and Eve and the serpent. So it played out during the time of Jacob and Esau. So Esau, again, was a man of the outdoors, always out there killing something, just like he do to this day, always destroying something and killing something. Jacob was a peaceful man. He was a shepherd, So this just goes to prove that he was a shepherd. Now, like I said, I'm building a lesson because a shepherd was something that was despised. It was an occupation that was despised, which we're going to get all of it. Now I'm going to jump ahead a couple more chapters. This is Genesis chapter 37 and 1. So Jacob, or Israel, his name was already changed to Israel, lived in the land where his father Isaac had been a stranger, a sojourner, a resident, an alien in the land of Canaan. An alien is basically someone who doesn't belong there, not what Esau tried to make it seem. It says, these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The boy was the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's secondary wives or concubine. Like it said right here, concubines. So basically, the boys that they were the sons of the concubine women, but they were still sons. They were still Israelites nonetheless. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Right, because I'm gonna let it explain. It says, now Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made a distinction, multicolored tunic. It says, basically, the meaning of this word is uncertain. Some sources indicate that it refers to a long sleeve tunic that reaches the ankles, essentially a light robe. In any case, the tunic was a visible reminder to Joseph's brothers of their father's favoritism towards him, which it wasn't just favoritism in a negative sense. It's just he was his favorite, and he was he was the son of Rachel. He was the firstborn son of Rachel, which was his favorite wife. He loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. And it said it all throughout the scriptures. He loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. And Joseph was his firstborn son of that. So, and Joseph was born, I don't think it goes into the age of how old he was. But if he was 17 here, what didn't it say he was 17? Yeah, he was 17 years old right here. So 17 years prior to this, Jacob wasn't, an old man yet, because Joseph had to be sent off to Egypt, and he had to be in Egypt for a certain amount of years. And the first set, we know for sure he was there 7 years. He was in prison for 2 years, I think. I don't know exactly how long he was there and how old. I think he was in his 30s though, or Benjamin was in his 30s around that time when they went to Egypt. And Benjamin was a young boy at this time. He was very young at this time, because I think Rachel had just passed away. She passed away giving birth to Benjamin. So let's get verse 4. It says, his brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than all of his brethren, so they hated him and could not find it within themselves to speak to him on friendly terms. Now, I'm going to get that. I'm going to show you that Joseph was the most favorite. Let's see. This is Genesis 33 and 1. It says, then Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. And basically, this is when Jacob was trying to go and get to the land that he needed to go to, but he knew he was going to have to go through Esau first. And he knew that Esau was trying to kill him. So this is what Jacob devised in his mind. He had already sent, people ahead to give gifts unto Esau to try to appease him. But Esau was, like I said, it was coming with 400 men. Now, why would Esau come out with 400 men to go meet his brother and his brother's family? He was trying to go kill him. But the Lord had already warned Esau. He had already put it on Esau, like, you better not do that, You better not, and I'm going to show you that too. The Lord had already warned, because he warns people about a thing that's going on. What was it? Let me see. Damn, I done forgot. Let me see. I think it's in this chapter. Yeah. Here we go. Now, this is when the Lord warned Laban not to be careful how he approached Jacob. This is Genesis 31. starting at verse 22, it says, on the third day after his departure, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his relatives with him and pursued him for 7 days, and they overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. The Most High came to Laban, the Armenian, in a dream at night and said to him, be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. And I'm going to get that in different translations. So it said, KJB, the Most High came to Laban, the Syrian, in a dream by night and said to him, take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. But then I'm going to say, in the NLT, it says, but the previous night, the Most High had appeared to Laban, the Armenian, in a dream and told him, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. In the NET, but the Most High came to Laban, the Armenian, in a dream at night and warned him, be careful that you neither bless nor curse Jacob. So the Lord gave warning to Laban on how he dealt with him, because Jacob had he left. He left before Laban came back. But Laban was dealing deceitfully with Jacob. You know, Jacob was trying to go establish himself. Laban was trying to keep him there so he can continue on being rich. He was basically trying to use Jacob to become rich. But Jacob couldn't establish his own, his own establishment, his own household, his own legacy, which is what the Lord was trying to do in the first place. So the Lord he came to Laban to check him like, look, be careful how you deal with Jacob. But remember, Jacob was just a shepherd. Jacob was just a shepherd. A shepherd was always despised. He wasn't looked at as a high level person. Now that's one account. Now let me see. It's another one. Let me see if it's in here. Okay, I'm going to just go back to this. I'm going to read now, and then I'm going to get another one. It's Genesis 33, starting at verse 1. Then Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front. So the maids and their children was in front. And then it said Leah and her children after them, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. The reason he put them in that order was because it was basically like the order of importance to him. Rachel was his most favorite wife. Joseph was his favorite son. Then Leah was second, and all the children of Leah, was second after them. And then the handmaids. It didn't even go into the order of them. And said, let me scroll down. That's just to go into Jacob loving Rachel and Joseph the most. Let's see. And, if you read all this, you'll understand Esau was trying to be deceitful, because he was basically trying to, quote unquote, escort Jacob to Esau's land, but he wanted to do that so he can kill him. Then when Jacob refused that, he was like, well, at least let some of my guys go with you to escort you where you're trying to go. And Jacob refused that because Esau was steady trying to kill him. He would have gave the order to his men to kill him. But he told Esau that, I'm going the same way you going. But, I got all these animals. I got my wives, my children. We're going to slow you down. You go on ahead. So he supplanted them. So Esau eventually just went on and left. And Jacob went in the opposite direction after he was gone. But that was the Lord being with Jacob. So let's see. I forgot where. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This is Genesis chapter 35. I'm going to start at one of the points in verse 5. It says, then the Most High said to Jacob, go up to Bethel and live there, and make an altar to the Most High, who appeared to you in a distinct manifestation when you fled years ago from Esau your brother. Then Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, get rid of the idols and images of foreign gods that are among you, and ceremonially purify yourselves and change into fresh clothes. Then let us get up and go to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to the Most High, who answered me in the day of distress and has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the idols and images of the foreign gods they had, and the rings which were in the ears worn as charms against evil, and the Most High, and Jacob buried them under the oak tree near Shechem. And as they journeyed, there was a great supernatural terror sent from the Most High on the cities around them, and for that reason, the Canaanites did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So the Lord literally sent. It said He sent in the AMP it says supernatural terror. The Lord was doing things so mightily that these other nations or the Canaanites, they didn't come after us. They didn't come after Israel. The Lord protected Jacob this whole time. Again, Jacob was just a shepherd. Jacob was the underdog. He was the shepherd. He was the lad. This is literally the nation of Israel in the process of being built. They haven't even been built fully yet. And I think at this time, I don't even think, at this time, Benjamin hadn't even been born yet. Benjamin was the last son to be born, and he hadn't even been born yet. I think it's later on. It's later on in the chapter that, down here, this is where Benjamin was born. I think. Yeah. So it's later on in the chapter where Benjamin was born. This is where Rachel had died at. So the nation of Israel was the last nation to be established. But this is the underdog, the underdog. This is Jacob's story. Now, going all the way back to the point of Joseph and his story about being an underdog. Genesis 37. And just to kind of finish the point on Jacob, even though Jacob was the last nation to be established, look at the covenant that the Lord made with Abraham, Isaac, that went to Jacob and then went to his 12 sons. Just look at the glory that the Lord has done to this day. And he's not even done yet. We still have to receive the kingdom of heaven. And that's going to be the fulfillment of it. The Lord bringing us back into our land. We at one with him. We got the new bodies. We living forever. Man, we still have so much to look forward to. So now going back to Genesis 37 and I'm going to read 2 again, the AMP. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. So he was a shepherd. Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The boy was the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's secondary wives or concubines. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made a distinctive multicolored turmeric. His brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than all of his brothers, so they hated him and could not find it within themselves to speak to him on friendly terms. Now Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to the details of this dream which I have dreamed. We brothers were binding sheaves of grain stalks in the field, and lo, my sheaf suddenly got up and stood upright and remained standing, and behold, your sheaves stood all around my sheaf and bowed down in respect." His brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you going to rule and govern us as your subjects?" So they hated him even more for telling them about his dreams and for his arrogant words, which we know the Lord played that out because Joseph was the most despised of the brothers, but at the same time, the Lord sent Joseph to Egypt, and Joseph became the second in command of all of Egypt. And his brothers did bow down to him. All of this came to pass. Now, verse 9. But Joseph dreamed still another dream, and told it to his brothers as well. He said, "See here, I have again dreamed a dream, and lo, this time I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon bowed down in respect to me. The 11 stars is representation of his 11 other brothers. He told it to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father rebuked him and said to him in disbelief, "What is the meaning of this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow down to the ground in respect before you?" So Joseph's brothers were envious and jealous of him, but his father kept the words of Joseph in mind, wondering their meaning. So Jacob was like, the Lord sent him this dream for a reason, but I just can't figure it out. And we had this to this day. The Lord has sent us dreams that you don't understand, but it's for a future time. So skipping on down, which I think I need to go to another chapter. Let's see. So we know Joseph got captured. He got sold into slavery, and then he got sent to Egypt. And everybody thought he was dead. So this is how you know years have passed. Everybody thought Joseph was dead. But let me get to the point, because I still got some more information to bring out. All right, so now this is Genesis 41. I don't know exactly how many years have passed, but it's been some years now. Everybody thought Joseph was dead. It says, now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and lo, there came up of the Nile 7 healthy cows, sleek, handsome, and fat, and they grazed in the reed grass in a marshy pasture. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the Nile, ugly, gaunt, and raw-boned, and stood by the fat cows on the bank of the Nile. Then the ugly and gaunt and raw-boned cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. So now I'm gonna scroll down. So that Joseph gave him the interpretation. So now this is verse 25. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the 2 dreams are one and the same and have one interpretation. The Most High has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The 2 dreams are one and the same. The 7 thin and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 thin ears dried up and scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine and hunger. This is the message. This is the message, just as I have told Pharaoh. The Most High has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. So he interpreted the dream of it was going to be 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine. So jumping down to 37, it says, now the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. So the Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, a man equal to Joseph, in whom is the divine spirit of the Most High? The Pharaoh said to Joseph, since your God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and clear-headed and wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed by according to your word, and pay respect to you with reverence, submission, and obedience. Only in the matters of the throne will I be greater than you in Egypt. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you in charge over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and dressed him in official vestments of fine linen, and put a great chain around his neck. He had him ride in his second chariot, and runners proclaimed before him, attention, bow the knee, and he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission shall no man raise his hand to do anything, or set his foot to go anywhere in all the land of Egypt. All classes of people shall submit to your authority. Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphanath Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of Onan, Heliopolis in Egypt, as his wife. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt to inspect and govern it. Now Joseph had been in Egypt 13 years and was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph departed from the from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt, performing his duty. So now it says Joseph was 30, but when we was reading, I think it was 33 or 37. It said Joseph was 17. You know, so it's just letting you know how many years had passed since Joseph had been in Egypt, and Joseph was he was taken into captivity. You know, let's see. He was already in captivity when he got there. Let's see. It's towards the bottom. This is Genesis 37 and 36. It says, meanwhile, in Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph as a slave to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the royal guard. So he was sold into slavery in Egypt, and then he was thrown into prison after it was a false accusation on Joseph that he was tried to sleep with his master's wife, which was a false accusation. But later on, after years had passed, Joseph became the second in command of Egypt. That's an underdog story because Joseph was literally a slave. He came from a slave to the second in command, only under Pharaoh. So now, let me jump ahead. And really, I'm skipping a lot of information. You just have to go back and read the story. It's a very beautiful story. I'm just going to go to 45. So it says, Genesis 45 and 1. Then Joseph could not control himself any longer in front of all those who attended him. And he called out, have everyone leave me. So no man stood there when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, because what was going on was Joseph was sending, when he seen his brothers come, because he knew exactly who his brothers was, but his brothers thought he was dead, so they didn't recognize him. He was 17 the last time they seen him. Now he's over 30. They haven't seen their brother in a long time. And he was an official man in Egypt. So he was dressed, like them and everything. When he seen his brothers, he was toying with them for a minute. He was asking them about, his family, how everybody was doing and everything. But they didn't know who he was. And he looked out on them. He gave them food. He gave them their money back because he wasn't going to treat them like he did the rest of the Egyptians. He sent them away. Told them to bring back his younger brother, which was Benjamin, because Benjamin was still a young child at the time that Joseph was still with him when he was 17. He haven't seen his brother in a long time. So long story short, he kept sending his brothers back and forth until the point to right here where it said he couldn't control himself because he had love for his family, and he knew his family. He knew where he came from. They were shepherds. Even though they had wealth, it was a great famine in the land. He knew his family needed the help. All he could think about was his family. So that's why I said he couldn't control himself, because every time he couldn't control himself, he would leave out and cry, and then fix himself up, get back into a character and go back and pretend to be, someone that he wasn't until he was ready to reveal it to them. So verse 2, Joseph wept aloud, and the Egyptians who had just left him heard it, and the house of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were speechless, for they were stunned and dismayed by the fact that they were in the presence of Joseph's presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they approached him, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now remember, when they sold him into Egypt, which I didn't, we didn't get it, but it was in the story, they hated him. Remember how I was saying that his brothers, they despised him because he was Jacob's favorite. But now he was the second in command over Egypt. He was well above them. verse 5, it says, "Now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For the Most High sent me ahead of you to save life and preserve our family. For the famine had been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 more years in which there will be no plowing and harvest. The Most High sent me to Egypt ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth and to keep you alive by a great escape. So now it was not you who sent me here, but the Most High, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh and a lord of all his household and ruler over all the land of Egypt." Literally an underdog story. Joseph came into Egypt as a slave, and now he done became the second in command of all of Egypt. And it was the Lord that set him up to do that. That's a beautiful underdog story. And Joseph was a shepherd just like the rest of his brothers, and was the most hated out of all the brothers. But now he's the second in command of Egypt, and he saved his family, and preserved them during the time of that great famine. So now I'm gonna jump ahead because everything the Lord he was literally building up the entire nation of Israel, building up the story. So now I'm gonna jump ahead even further. Let me see. Make sure this is the right chapter. I think it's chapter 46. Yep. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna start at 1 and read to 4. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba, where both his father and grandfather had worshipped the Most High, and offered sacrifices to the Most High of the God of his father Isaac. And the Most High spoke to Israel in visions and of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." And he said, "I am the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make your descendants a great nation there," which he did. "I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring your people up again. And Joseph will put his hands over your eyes to close them at the time of your death." So Jacob set out for Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they came into Egypt. I'm gonna jump down. Thought I had seen it. Because the land that they was living on was a land set for cattle. It was the best land in Egypt, set for cattle. Now this is 28. Now Jacob Israel sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to direct him to Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen. As soon as he presented himself, this ain't what I wanted. Let me see. Yeah, this is it. Before him authenticated his identity, he fell on his father's neck and wept on his neck a very long time. This was the first time Jacob and Joseph had seen each other since he was 17. So this was literally their first time seeing each other in over 13 years. That was their first time seeing each other. And Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die in peace, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me, and the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have." Right. So, and it shall be that when Pharaoh calls you and says, "What is your occupation?" you shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our fathers before us, in order that you may live separately and securely in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is repulsive to the Egyptians. And this is one of the points I've been trying to get to. Verse 34 in the KJV, it says that ye shall say the servants' trade have been about cattle from our youth even unto now, both we and also our fathers, that you may know in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. Which, let me see, in the NLT, you must tell him, we are your servants. We, your servants, have raised livestock all our lives, and as our ancestors have always done. When you tell him this, he will let you live here in the region of Goshen, for the Egyptians despise shepherds. In the NET, it says, for everyone who takes care of sheep is disgusting to the Egyptians. So a shepherd is literally despised, someone who attends to the animals. Now, I got this on Chat GPT. Why was being a shepherd in the Bible despised? And it says being a shepherd in biblical times, especially in the context of ancient Israel and surrounding cultures, was often associated with low social status and was sometimes looked down upon. Here's why. Remember, Jacob was a shepherd. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they were shepherds. Jacob's children, shepherds. Joseph was a shepherd. And we're going to get David too. He's a shepherd. But he became the king of Israel. So it says social status, social class, and status. Shepherds were typically from the lower social class. They didn't own land or wealth, but worked long, difficult hours tending animals. This made the job menial and undesirable for those of higher social and or political positions. They looked down on that. You were the underdog. You were despised. If you was a shepherd, you wasn't really looked at as someone of importance. It says isolation from society. Shepherds often lived away from towns for long periods, tending flocks in remote areas. And Goshen was a remote area. It was the best land in Egypt for tending cattle. So that's why the Israelites was given that. It says this isolation made them socially marginalized. They were literally and figuratively on the fringes of society. Now, ceremonial uncleanliness. In Jewish, which is a Jewish religious, but really in our culture, in the Israelites' culture, ritual purity was important. Shepherds were often considered ceremonially unclean because they couldn't regularly attend temple services. They were in constant contact with animals and bodily fluids, which could make them ritually impure. And we're going to get an example of that. They couldn't regularly attend temple services. Now we're going to get the story of David. And I'm going to try to make it a little bit quick. I forgot. 1 Samuel 16. This is 1 Samuel chapter 16 and 1 in the AMP. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve for Saul when I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have chosen a king for myself among his sons. But Samuel said, how can I go? When Saul hears about it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer from the herd and say with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. You shall invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you should do after that. And you shall anoint for me the one who I designate. So Samuel did what the Lord said to come to Bethlehem, and the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and said, do you come in peace? Right? Because they know when a prophet comes around, when the prophet come around, 9 times out of 10, it might not be good. You know, that they ain't just coming to visit and you know what I'm saying, give you some, you know what I'm saying, keep up the good work. 9 times out of 10, they come in there to tell you something that the Lord about to do. And he said, in peace, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. He also consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. So it happened when they came, or that when they had come, he looked at Eliab, the eldest son, and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is him before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his height or of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. For the Lord looks at the inward for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. in your heart goes into your mind. Try to show that real quick. Hebrew word for it is la'ab. And it says the inner man, the mind, the will, the heart, the soul, the understanding. So the mind, he looks at how a person thinks, how they truly feel. Verse 8, then Jesse called Abna Abin Adab and had him pass before Samuel. But Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen this one either. Then Jesse had Shamath pass by, and Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen him either. Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? Jesse replied, there is still one left. The youngest, he is tending the sheep. Or in the KJV, it said he keepeth the sheep. He was a shepherd. Samuel said to Jesse, send word and bring him, because we will not sit down to eat the sacrificial meal until he gets here. But like we read, like we read right here, it said, again, it says Jewish religious life. Ritual purity was important. Shepherds were often considered ceremonially unclean because they couldn't regularly attend temple services. So David couldn't be there because he was tending to the sheep. He was tending to the cattle. They were in contrast, they was in constant contact with animals and bodily fluids, which could make them ritually impure. By the time of the New Testament, especially in Greco-Roman and some later, again, Jewish, but Jew cult context, shepherds had a reputation for being dishonest or untrustworthy, perhaps due to their transient, rough nature of their lives. They were sometimes grouped with tax collectors and sinners in social attitudes. Now, economic hardship. Shepherding wasn't a path to wealth. Most shepherds worked for others, often in difficult conditions. The job involved physical hardships, exposure to the elements, and danger from wild animals or thieves. Literally, this is what men had to go through, when tending to animals. Because caring for an animal is like constantly caring for a child, constantly caring for a child. You have to protect it, feed it, guide it, and allow it to do what it needs to do in order so it can do what it needs to do for you. Take care of it, make sure it's physically fit and in shape. It was a difficult job. It required a lot going into it. And it wasn't particularly, like I said, it wasn't a path to wealth. But these were the underdogs. A lot of shepherds were the underdogs of society that became great. Yahweh Shem Shai elevated them because they were. He looks at the inward man. Now it says, matter of fact, let me go back. Let me finish getting David's story. So it says, so Jesse sent word, verse 12, Jesse sent word and brought him in. Now he had a ruddy complex with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. The Lord said to Samuel, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil, and anointed David in the presence of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. And Samuel arose and went to Ramoth. So David was anointed to be the next king in Israel. Now, let me jump ahead. It might be in this chapter. This is 1 Samuel 17 and 20. So David got up early in the morning, left the flock with a keeper, because usually while his brothers was while the nation of Israel and his brothers was out at war with the Philistines, David was still at home tending to the sheep. But this time, the Lord sent him out there. So it said David got up early in the morning, left the flock with a keeper, picked up the provisions, and went just as Jesse had directed him. And he came to the encampment as the army was going out in battle formation, shouting the battle cry. It says Israel and the Philistines drew up in battle formation, army against army. Then David left his provisions in the care of the supply keeper and ran to the ranks and came and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, behold, the champion of the Philistine of Gath, named Goliath, was coming up forth from the army of the Philistines. And he spoke these same words again, and David heard them. When the men of Israel all saw the man, they fled from him and were very frightened. The men of Israel said, have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he is coming up to defy Israel. The king will reward the man who kills him with great riches and will give him his daughter in marriage and make his father's house or family free from taxes and service in Israel. Now remember, David was already anointed to be king. Then on top of that, it said he finna become rich. He's gonna get the king's daughter in marriage, and he gonna be free from taxes and services. Come on, man. David, all of that didn't even matter because David became the king. So he came in control of all of that. It said, then David spoke to the men who were standing by him. What will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and removes the disgrace of his taunting from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he has taunted and defied the armies of the living God? Now remember, David still is just a shepherd. He wasn't built for the army. He wasn't built for the military or to go out and fight. The men told him this is what will be done for him, for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brothers, heard what he said to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David, and he said, why have you come down here? With whom do you lead those few sheep in the wilderness? Like, see, you like, man, you supposed to be back at home tending to the sheep. What you down here for? You ain't supposed to be down here. And he said, I know your presumption, your overconfidence, and the evil of your heart, for you have come down in order to see the battle. But David said, what have I done now? Was it not just a harmless question? And then David turned away from Eliab to someone else and asked the same question, and the people gave him the same answer as the first. When the words that David spoke were heard, the men reported them to Saul and sent for him. David said to Saul, let no man's courage fall because of him, Goliath. Your servant will go out and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth. David wasn't built for that. You know, David was a shepherd, but David was the underdog, and he was despised. Verse 34, but David said to Saul, your servant was tending his father's sheep. He was a shepherd. When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and attacked it and rescued the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose up against me, I seized it by its whiskers and struck and killed it. But it literally just told you that was a part of the hardships. It said the job include physical hardship, exposure to the elements, and danger from wild animals or thieves. So David had to deal with all this. They wasn't a rich people. David's family wasn't rich or wealthy. They came up off of David because of what Yahweh Shemashah had done for him. So I'm going to finish this out, and then I'm going to finish David's story out. And I'm going to end it there. Now, this contrasts with biblical imagery. Interestingly, despite the social stigma, the Bible frequently used shepherding as a powerful metaphor. The Most High is portrayed as a shepherd in Psalms 23. Yahweh Shah calls himself the good shepherd in John chapter 10. Many biblical leaders, Moses, David, were shepherds before leading the Most High's people. This contrast highlights the theme of the Most High's preference for the humble, the outcast, and the overlooked. He elevates what society despises, and that translates even to today. We are despised amongst all, even in our nation, we are despised more than some of the people in our nation. Was not with Yahweh Shah, our Lord and Savior? Did not the people choose Barabbas? I think it was Barabbas, that's his name, over Yahweh Shah to be freed? And Yahweh Shah did nothing wrong. Barabbas deserved to be crucified. But Yahweh Shah did nothing wrong, and yet they chose Barabbas, to free Barabbas over Yahweh Shah. And I get that. Get that real quick. I don't even remember how to spell his name. Okay, here he is. Matthew 27:17. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Yahushua, which is called the Hamashiach? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. So Pilate's wife told him, like, look, you don't need to get involved with that man Yahushua. I done had dreams about him that wasn't pleasant. You don't want nothing to do with him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Yahushua. So they was literally telling you they chose Barabbas. It says the governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twain will ye that I release unto you? They said Barabbas. Pilate said unto them, What shall I do then with Yahushua, which is called the Hamashiach? They all said to him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil have he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. So Yahushua, he was despised amongst his own people, and he did nothing wrong. He was considered an outcast. His own hometown didn't even accept him, and he was overlooked, but not by everybody, not by the elect, but the majority of the people, they rejected him. So the Lord he elevates what society despises. Yahushua became the head of the nation. So this is the summary. It says, being a shepherd was despised because it was a low status, physically demanding, and ritually unclean job. Yet in Scripture, the Most High uses the role of a shepherd to symbolize care, leadership, and redemption, flipping the cultural view on his head. So Yahushua, he cared about his people. He is the leader. He still cares about us. He is the leader, and he's the reason why we have been redeemed. And furthermore, it's the same way with even you brothers teaching this word of sincerity and the truth. It symbolizes care of the Heavenly Father and the care that we have, because this is a labor of love. Leadership, because the men that you see on the street corners are literally going to be the next world rulers. And redemption. This is the Lord showing you that we have been redeemed. But it is a physically demanding job, which we have to constantly do the work of Yahweh until we get that payoff. So I'm going to end it right there. I know it's been a lengthy lesson, but Lord will, it's been edifying. And on that note, I want to give our praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, by Hashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS that rule well. Peace, love, and salutations to all the brothers out there pushing this word of sincerity and the truth. Shalom to the brothers, sisters, and children out there keeping this word of sincerity and the truth. Until next time, shalom.